Thank you, thank you, thank you. So next up, we're going to remember one of the more indelible talents that Dark Shadows gave us. The inimitable Grayson Hall. Dan Curtis loved Grayson, and he used her in one of his capers he did in the 70s, the Great Ice ripoff, and of course her husband Sam was a big part of the whole big adventure of things. And here we have the Grayson, the official one and only Grayson Hall biographer, R.J. Jameson.
Thank you, Jim. Who else here is on East Coast time and really lagging? Right. All right, do we have any Grayson Hall fans in the house? One more time, do we have any Grayson Hall fans? Thank you. I am Rebecca Jean Jameson. Yes, I am R.J. Jameson. Everyone's always a little confused. I have the great pleasure of talking tonight with a couple of people who Grayson holds a special place in their hearts. Of course, we have first her son here, Matthew Benedict, son Hall. And then we have my very good friend, Nancy Aaron. I always knew about Dark Shadows. My mother was one of those big original fans, and but I didn't get into it until like around the year 2000. I was at home sick. My boyfriend had just gotten 500 channels of cable, and there was nothing on that I wanted to watch while I was sick until I stumbled upon the Sci-Fi Channel airing Dark Shadows. And I was at home sick for like 2 weeks, got kind of sucked in. Some years later, I ended up living in New York City, and there was a man who had wanted to write a biography about Grayson. His name was Stephen Schutt. And then he finally moved on to other things, and he said, "Why don't you do it?" And I said, yes. I lived in New York. I had access to records and people, and I did do that. But one of the avenues to supporting my love for Grayson was finding Nancy's webpage about remembering Grayson Hall. And she also hosted a Yahoo group where lots of Grayson fans gathered. And so I'd like Nancy to just talk a little bit about why she did that and how she did that. Nancy Aaron.
So I started watching Dark Shadows in 1967. I was 7 years old, fell in love with Barnabas, and that's basically what I remembered as a kid, was Barnabas and the 1795 storyline. So I got older, the show went off the air, and I didn't get back into it until it started showing on the Sci-Fi Channel. And I realized that I didn't really remember the character of Julia Hoffman. And as a middle-aged woman, she is the one who resonated with me. So there was a huge difference between being a child and then a middle-aged woman and watching this woman who was smart and devoted and so courageous. And, you know, when I was growing up, we didn't have female characters like that very often. So I was so impressed and went to a festival in 1997, and I realized Julia and Grayson weren't getting that much love. I had a hard time finding, you know, merchandise, etc. So I joined, there was a Dark Shadows Yahoo group. It was an email group because there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram. And she still wasn't getting a lot of love. And so I said, well, the heck with this, I'm starting my own Yahoo group, which was called the Julia List. And we had that for quite a few years, and I was able to have a nice echo chamber, people who agreed with me and didn't argue with me about Julia and Grayson. And then with a friend, I created a Grayson Hall website. And then I started going to more festivals and meeting more Grayson fans. And we decided we should have our own little Grayson Fests. So for several years, we did that, a small group of us. We went up to Canada for a few years. We would go to the Shaw Festival. We were lucky enough to see Happy End, which Grayson had appeared in on Broadway. We went to her hometown of Philadelphia. We went to Newport, of course, because of Seaview. And then we went to Colonial Williamsburg because, that fit in with the whole 1795 storyline. And then this lady decides she's going to write a biography. And if you haven't read it, you need to read it. Her research was absolutely stunning. She found out a lot of things that I think even Matt didn't know. And,
True.
and she asked me to edit it for her. So I edited her book, and so I learned a whole lot about Grayson. And so we were able to make some noise, keep her, her memory alive. The Yahoo group eventually went away when Facebook came along. And so now we have a Facebook group dedicated to Julia and her characters, and I'm one of those admins. So I'm happy to say that we have, as Matt would say, kept the faith.
Thank you, Nancy. And so I came in, like I said, in the early 2000s, wrote the book, and we have seen steady progression, public affection, opening for Grayson, and I'm very gratified by that. And then next, I think, Matthew, if you'd just like to say a few things, whatever you like, and then we'll do a few Q&As.
Well, I didn't know any of that was happening. And I'm sorry I didn't, because I would have, totally gotten involved. But I actually, in my blithe ignorance, I actually was unaware that entire effort was going on. You were doing stuff in Canada.
We did talk. You and I did talk about the website.
The website.
Because I had to have your approval on something.
Yeah, but before that, the Yahoo stuff. No, that's amazing. But I know about it now. I think there are a couple of things that are interesting about my mother that I've been thinking a lot about today. Actually, I've mentioned it to some of you, and I think that one of the things that makes her performances as compelling as they are is that she actually was able to display at all times both strength and vulnerability. And it's something I've thought about just in terms of there's an old line that a writer or someone who can keep two ideas in their head at the same time, and I think that an actor is somebody who can keep two emotions in their body and soul at the same time. And I think that she does that almost routinely on Dark Shadows. And I think it informs so much of her work, is that sense of no matter how tough she's being, there is just somewhere inside this vulnerability that I think really kind of resonates, especially with I understand the logic of not really getting who the nervous woman is when you're a kid, but as you grow into yourself, that level of kind of deep emotional understanding is I think really compelling and honest, because we all have strengths and vulnerabilities, and she was just able to get them out there in a really understandable way.
Matthew, you grew up in a household. You were a young child when this show was being filmed. but you were really around the set, and the actors were around your home. What do you kind of remember about the melee of all of that and all those years?
Well, Mom was great at having friends, and Nancy Barrett especially. They were very close, and stayed close for many years. But we were close. Okay, we were actually only a few blocks from the studio, so often it would be like, "Hey, come on over to our house for drinks," and I would like come out from trying, you know, the constant battle with me trying to do my math homework, to find, like, you know, I mean, Jonathan, Thayer David, Nancy, certainly, kind of all in our kitchen, that was, you know, that was amazing, but I also, as I've said in various venues, I actually spent a fair amount of time in the studio because I'm an only child, and both my parents were working, and the studio was pretty close to the house, so I would just go there instead of going home, and sit in my mother's dressing room and try to do homework, that was, so I was really actively involved, and I feel like I've said all this, and I hope I'm not boring you. I was actively, I mean, it was such a part of our lives. My father was writing it, my mother was in it, and I was there without being part of it in a way. And, you know, that's why I was saying in the other panel, it's kind of why when the 1991 show happened, I kind of glommed onto it because I finally got to be part of Dark Shadows. But Mom was happiest when she was working. And that was Dark Shadows. It was also any play she did. It was other movies. She was always at her happiest when she was that level of busy. And Dark Shadows was busy. It was like I mean, you know, my father was lying on the floor. I would come home from school, and my father would be lying on the floor with Gordon. Gordon Russell would be sitting, and my father would be lying on the floor pulling his eyebrows. And once he actually, like he was lying on the floor, trying to come up with plots for Dark Shadows, and he had a pencil in his ear, and the eraser broke off. It was in his ear, and he actually had to go to the doctor to get it extracted. But that just, I mean, everything was, I mean, we ate and slept and dreamt, and, you know, it was everything we went to the doctor because of Dark Shadows. And Gordon and Ron Sproat, and they were like often in our red living room when I would come home from school, and Gordon was the first person who ever made the joke to me, "Don't let your meat loaf," which I still think is funny. But anyway, is that enough?
Yeah, that's enough. And then it was over.
And then it was over.
And then what was that like for that sudden rush of so much energy from both of your parents, and it was suddenly over?
It was, on a fundamental and primary level, it was very bad. But on a more kind of adult level, it was like, in a certain sense, devoutly to be wished. My father was aware of a few things. My father was aware that the show was going too fast, and if you skipped a week, you got lost. You know, my father was aware that they were kind of tripping up their own rules a bit. I wouldn't say jumping the shark. I would say trying to erase the shark. And Mom, they had just been working incredibly hard for like 5 years on this thing. And when it finally, like, you know, behemoth to an end, first of all, then they did the movie, which became its own trauma story, as I was saying earlier. I hope I wasn't like Captain bringing that down, but anyway. Okay.
I didn't hear it, so I don't know.
Okay, good. I wasn't. I was totally humorous. But life went on. like they did the second Dark Shadows movie. Mom did a play in Nantucket, which was, I was 14 and Mom did Gargoyles, and then I was 15 and Mom did Marco Polo Sings a Solo, which is a John Grier play in Nantucket. Those two were like, especially the Nantucket thing, were like the best summers of my youthful life. You know, they were just, and in both cases, I was on the set in Carlsbad, New Mexico during Gargoyles, and I was in Nantucket, living in the actor's house, where the mom had been given a room, and she took a place nearby. And so I was living in the actor's house with all these, you know, young, crazy actors. And it was kind of a blooming of new stuff that took them new places. That was that. I mean, it was, in some sense, I mean, it was a pressure cooker for a long time, Dark Shadows, and then they both had, I think, a sense of discouragement in a way that was over, but at the same time, a tremendous sense of energy release. And I think they both went on to there was a tremendous release of energy that bloomed them into new projects and things like that.
Setting Dark Shadows aside, do you think there's one or two particular projects that she took on that meant the most to her?
Well, she loved theater, and she did. You would know, the thing with Rebecca's book is that it is encyclopedic, and it is like, I'm really bad at chronology, because I smoked pot in high school.
Who didn't?
And I actually routinely, semi-routinely check the dates of my own life by looking at Rebecca's book. And this is not a joke. This is absolutely true. It's like, when did that happen? Oh, hold it, you know.
And I know where it's at, his house, so.
Yeah. And so I do recommend Rebecca's book extremely a lot. But it's also, I think it's interesting in terms of the sheer amount of work she did over her career. I mean, it's an exhaustive resource for what her career was. So when you ask what specific projects happened then, what specific projects happened then?
I know there was a particular play, I was in the title, it was in the mid-70s where there was a suicide with Derek Jacobi.
Yeah.
And Madeline Sherwood left, and that's how your mother got the job, right? But there was a play where your father said he thought she was the best in, and I can see the photo, it's in the book, she's in a black dress, but I can't remember the title.
Oh, is that Happy End?
No, no, that's a fabulous costume though, by the way, her costumes in that show. And
can I tell my happy end?
yes, I was just gonna say, go ahead and tell the happy end story, that's a good one.
This is really embarrassing. Man, I'm so sorry we're talking over you. Really.
She's in the middle, she's in the thick of it.
She's playing monkey in the middle. Okay, the terrible happy end story. All right. So I was in high school. Dark Shadows was over. And
was it 77?
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah.
And Mom's in a play on Broadway called Happy End, which was the Bertolt Brecht's Carrot Files sequel to the Three Penny Opera. And she plays the Fly, who is the leader of a gang of criminals, and had shed terrific costumes. And it was a really interesting cast. There were a lot of good people in it.
Meryl Streep and Christopher Lloyd.
Well, yeah, and Christopher Lloyd. But Meryl Streep was actually replaced. I want to say Shirley Knight.
Yeah.
Sure.
No. She replaced Shirley Knight because Shirley couldn't sing very well.
Right. And it was Streep's first time on Broadway. And Meryl Streep was a young upcoming actress who hadn't done Broadway yet. And I, meanwhile, had seen the play so many times I couldn't count it, because I would just, that's where Mom was, so I would just go, and they knew me, and then slip into the theater towards the third act, or towards the end, and catch the end of it from an empty seat somewhere in the theater, and then go backstage and say to Mom, "Hey, where are we going to have dinner?" And this was routine. I mean, every time I was, not weekly, but it happened with some regularity, and then they switched. Shirley and I left, and as we've established, Meryl Streep entered the thing, and they shared a dressing room. And Mom had drilled me on theater manners. Drilled me on theater manners. And as I said, I smoked a lot of pot in high school. And so, essentially, I went in, I did the standard thing, and there was a new actress playing the ingenue, and I kind of, it ended, and everybody clapped and went home, and I went upstairs to the dressing room, and I didn't knock, I just burst into the dressing room, and there before me was Meryl Streep, stark fucking naked.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
And I looked at her, and she grabbed things. My mother grabbed things, and they were covering me. They covered Meryl Streep. And I was so dumbfounded that I then said, "You were good." "Mom, where are we going to dinner?"
That's a new one for us, Matthew. That's a new story. Thank you.
There are a couple of things my mother never forgave me for. One of them was having to drive to Albany when I wasn't in Albany. That was college. The other was this.
That is great. I'm going to come down, so if people have questions, so raise up your hand. But first I want to ask Nancy, as you started the Julia list and moderated that for over 15 years, what were some of the greatest misconceptions about Grayson that you had to continually disabuse people of?
Well, we fought a lot about Julia was too old for Barnabas.
How old was Barnabas?
200 years old.
And Grayson was 46, 47?
40s, yeah. Yeah, that was one thing. I'm trying to think what else. People complaining that she overacted, that she was campy. I don't know if you've paid much attention to the Dark Shadows comic books, but they always draw Julia looking like a man. It's very annoying.
Note to the animation
Yes,
show.
exactly.
They picked up that character.
She was a beautiful woman. Draw her that way, please.
Thank you. Questions? There's someone out here. Okay, I'll come back to you.
I have a two-part question, and I realize a lot of Grayson's work was theater, so it's gone. But what is of her works for each of the three of you that's still available, whether film or television, outside of Dark Shadows, that we should go to and catch because you think it's overlooked? And secondly, from doing research articles myself, what was the one question you never got answered? Because I know with certain articles myself, I could really get better.
What year were you really born? What year was you? I mean, I think I have an answer, but Matthew found something
Is the
recent.
question, what year was she born?
No, he asked, what was the question that I never got really answered? And I said, I thought I knew, but you found something from your grandmother that cast doubt on it all again. You guys want to answer the first part of his question? What body of work or something that's still available that you think people should see?
Well, you found, I'm sorry. You found in the Lincoln Center archives video of Happy End.
Yeah, that's right.
And other stuff too. There's, I think, I don't know if there's video of, This is a weird thing with my mother. She actually, for her moment, did more Genet plays than any other contemporary actress. I mean, she did a fair amount of Genet. And I mean, she was in The Balcony and she was in The Screens, and both of those were big deal productions. There may be footage of The Screens somewhere. It was an insane avant-garde thing. It was like 3 hours, it was longer, it was like 3 or 4 hours long. But that would be hard to find. But I think Nancy has a good suggestion, so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Okay.
Okay, so if I'm struck dead by lightning in the next second, you know it was Grayson. If you haven't seen Satan in High Heels, which she was not in, you should, because she
Because
is
she's not in it.
fabulous.
Yeah, she's good.
She is fabulous, but she denied.
She let it rip, basically.
And I would agree, Satan in High Heels is quite a hoot. And of course, her Oscar-nominated film, The Night of the Iguana.
I don't want it.
All right. And
Which is better than Satan in High Heels.
Yeah, yes. And your question?
Actually, it's twofold, because forgive my memory, and I do mean that, because I absolutely love Grayson Hall a lot. The thing about Grayson Hall is that she was able to stretch her characters to a place that knocked me out. Now, if I recall correctly, she was probably, in my opinion, the only one who could actually carry a French accent and keep it going. Is that correct? That's what I thought. Yeah, she did. Then she also did Magda Rakosi, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That woman was so amazing, and about her age range with Barnabas, you're like, he's 200 years older than she was. I love the way that they ended it, because they ended it with them together. And even though I loved Barnabas and Angelique, I loved what they did with Julia Hoffman and Barnabas. That was awesome. Now, Sam Hall, that's your dad. I know that. Is he the one that played, did he play Magda Rakosi's husband?
No, that was Thayer David.
That was Thayer David.
Yes.
Oh my God. Now, okay, but now here was the first question about Sam. Is he the one that played?
Sam wasn't an actor.
Sam Hall wasn't an actor. Was he
She's
a
talking
writer?
about
The writer.
David. She's talking about David Ford, I think.
Who played? You just threw me for a loop.
David Ford.
Are you thinking of Thayer David again? Okay. Yeah.
I think we're all thinking of Thayer David.
If you can get my second book, Barnabas and Company, it'll list all of the roles he played. Okay, be quick.
To him. What I wanted to tell you, and this is what I try to tell everybody up on stage when I get a chance, is I am so happy that you were raised with such a family of very smart but talented individuals for parents. That's what I wanted to tell you.
Oh, that's very sweet.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Okay, we only have time for a couple more.
Matthew, you don't have to answer this question.
Okay.
But you're such an honest guy. Is there any gossip you can tell us about Grayson and the other Dark Shadows actors? Is there any gossip you can tell us about Grayson and the other Dark Shadows actors?
Well, there's a lot of gossip about the other Dark Shadows actors, and I don't feel very cool about telling you. I once blurted something in an interview, which years and years ago, and my father was interviewed, and then I was interviewed, and it was put on tape, and I told a story, and in the cab going back home, my father said, you know, they weren't in a relationship. They were both married to other people. And I'm not going to say who that was. But yeah, that happened. But that wasn't my mom. My mother and father were a pretty close-knit unit. I mean, they were kind of, I mean, their gears fit together, you know. And I don't really think, I mean, if there's gossip about my mom, I honestly don't think there really was, unless you know differently.
Well, I was going to ask Rebecca if I can tell the one story that's in the book about,
It's in the book.
if it's in the book. I won't identify the actor, but there was somebody who Grayson had a scene with, and he managed to maneuver her
Oh, out of her key light?
off of her, and her mark, and so that he was front and center. You know the story?
Who put that in?
And so during the scene, which of course, they couldn't stop, it was live to tape, she ground her heel into the top of his foot. And
That's Mom.
he had to continue the scene with tears in his eyes. And when they got done, she said to him, "Now you'll never do that again, will you?"
Aces.
Yeah, Mom could be a bitch.
Here you go.
Hi. In Memorial Day in 1985, I had the privilege of going to Seaview with Jonathan, and it seemed like he must have loved your mom a lot because he was teasing her on the camera without mentioning her name. He said, "Now, which actress?" He said actor. Which actor on Dark Shadows would always come up and to their spot and make sure they're on their spot by looking down and then go on with their line? And he was teasing your mom, and I think the festivals had just started, and he was enjoying himself, and I think he missed your mom, and I think he was really hoping that she would show up at a festival. Sadly, the timing was off, and she passed away later that year. But can you address anything about what your mom thought of Jonathan? Oh, well, I've heard the tape. Dinosaur friend?
My mother was extremely fond of Jonathan. She had her frustrations with him. He was in our house a fair amount, and she didn't bring people to the house that she didn't like. I think she had her frustrations with him, which had to do with his learning lines, and I think that was if there was any piece of antagonism between them, it was specifically on that rather technical level. I think she very much. They were friends, and they were also, compadres that were living through what was, as I said, a ton of work, and they had each other's backs, like in many, many ways. I think she had, I would cue my mother for 50 cents instead of doing my math homework. That's why I'm bad at math. I think Jonathan so that was a real, every night my mom and I would sit and do this. Every night she was on, or the next day, we would spend an hour. She would spend a chunk of time learning the script, and then I would basically test her for an hour, for half an hour, 45 minutes to get through the entire thing. Once if she didn't make a mistake, twice if she did, So she had a hardcore, skill level competency thing that she was very attached to. And I think that frustration existed between her and Jonathan. I'm not saying that he didn't, learning lines is hard. And especially when you're the hero of a 5-day-a-week soap opera,
And dyslexic.
And was dyslexic, and also, I think I think Jonathan existed under a fair amount of pressure, being the lead of this thing. I think that actually, he can't. Okay, I'll say it. He was just the Jerry Garcia of it. And I think he was under a great deal of pressure in some way to keep this ball rolling forward. He was the irreplaceable piece. And
He had a lot of pressure on his shoulders, for sure.
he did, and I'm sure Mom didn't help sometimes. But that, to speak to their relationship, I think that there was a tremendous personal friendship and some degree of technical difficulty. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions. I'm sorry we don't have any more time. Thank you, Nancy and Matthew, for remembering a